Hey guys, the idea for this video came up spontaneously. About half a year ago, we had a lot of beeswax left over. Useful stuff, we can use it later somehow. But in order not to attract the wax moth, which will not remain indifferent to such a treat, the container was tightly covered with such a bag and put away for storage. And recently, we remembered about the wax and decided to see how it is there. And we were stunned. Where's the wax? Where's the cellophane that covered it? How is this possible? Did the moth eat the bag? As we gathered information, it turned out that the moth itself is quite harmless. But its larva is probably the only creature in the world that can not only eat and digest wax, but also get along with cellophane. Very environmentally friendly, isn't it? But this fact needs further verification, so today we're going to find out the truth. Besides, let's have a competition and try to feed the cellophane also to maggot and Zophobas. We prepare the containers, each of which will contain our test subjects, and we can begin. According to Wikipedia, not only wax moth larvae can gnaw on plastic bags. Zophobas larvae can do the same, but unlike wax moths, they can't digest the material. Anyway, let's see how they both deal with almost non-degradable cellophane. We cut off a small square piece and place it in each of the vessels. It's only been 4 hours and we're already seeing results. So far, only the wax moth larva has managed to make its first hole in the cellophane. And in general, they are much more active than other competitors, constantly climbing the walls of the container and trying to get out. So we have to cover the container with food foil to keep the larvae from dispersing. Besides, they've made enough nets inside the container for 4 hours. Well, let them work. And we'll leave them alone with the cellophane for a whole day. After 24 hours, we'll see which of the larvae do best and which don't eat the bags at all. And while they're dealing with the material, each in their own way, let's take a closer look at each of the larvae. After all, this is a very interesting stage of development in itself, as it is just beginning to change its structure. Let's start with the wax moth larva, which has every chance of becoming our star today. Its body is clearly segmented, covered with sparse hairs and white in color. On the background, the orange head stands out, where you can see those predatory chewers, ready to chew on plastic bags. It is also known that at this stage of its life cycle, the insect is so satiated that the adult wax moth does not need to look for food. The Zophobas larva also has a segmented body, but the parts are much larger. This is why it is the longest of all those that exist today. It is also yellow in color. The head is not as pronounced as that of the wax moth, but it is also easy to see the organs that the creature uses to grind its food and navigate through space. There are even legs under the top of the body. Now, the maggot is familiar to many. A characteristic feature of this future fly is the black spots on its sides, which stand out against the background of its white body. In the upper part of the body of this creature, it is not difficult to consider something similar to eyes, and in general, the head stands out with its orange coloring. Maggot are much larger than the other participants of today's experiments. Besides, every fisherman knows how good they are as bait. They can also be used as food for aquarium fish and exotic animals. So we have met the larvae. Now it is time to see how they cope with polyethylene in 24 hours. A square of polyethylene thrown to a wax moth was almost completely eaten in just 24 hours. We had a hard time finding the little bit they didn't eat. By eating it, the larvae recycle the plastic into a substance called ethylene glycol. It's colorless and odorless, but it's pretty toxic. But that doesn't stop the larvae from eating it. According to scientists, these larvae produce a special enzyme that breaks down polyethylene. They are so successful at breaking down polyethylene because its chemical structure is similar to wax. And come to think of it, in 24 hours they have woven the vessel with the webbing that is made for a cocoon. The polyethylene square that was thrown into the container with the maggot remained completely intact. On the other hand, why would they eat it? But it was worth checking. But the Zophobas larvae have wasted no time in the last 24 hours. When we pulled a piece out of the bag, it was partially nibbled and thinner. And for us, it's time to move on. We'll be treating today's test subjects with other products. The next product is a must for Zophobas, also known as flower maggots. As the name implies, these yellow elongated maggots are not indifferent to anything to do with baked goods. Therefore, corn sticks should definitely be to their liking. Throw a stick into each of the vessels. There is no point in waiting a whole day here because the first results must appear within a few hours. Okay, 6 hours have passed. That means it's time to see how the larvae interact with the sticks. The first thing to note is the unreliability of the food film for the wax moth larvae. In just a few hours, one of the larvae managed to eat a hole in the makeshift lid. Strangely, this didn't happen in the last experiment when we left them for 24 hours. Now let's take a look at the sweet corn sticks, and the wax moth larvae have done a good job on it. It's all full of little holes that they managed to chew through, and some of the larvae are still inside. Obviously, they enjoyed the treat, and if they had had more time, there would have been nothing left of the sweet corn. This result is understandable because honeycombs are sweet, and so is the corn stick. The Zophobas, also known as the flower maggot, was really surprised, but not as much as I would have liked. The stick is practically intact. Very strange, because usually this creature eats with appetite various grains and their derivatives, including corn. But not this time. Was there some kind of malfunction, or are the larvae just not hungry? It's hard to say. However, oprish, aka meat fly larvae, also refuse to eat the stick. Now let's try to please the maggot and offer the larvae a piece of meat. Unpack a package of chicken legs, take one of them, and carefully separate 3 small pieces. And since, even in theory, all larvae without exception like meat, we can organize a comparative test. Which of them will quickly overcome a piece of product? We throw the test samples into the jars and leave them for a few hours. It's been 4 hours, so let's see the results. And they really surprised us. There are several sensations at once. First, the wax moth larvae tried to leave the jar again, gnawing a hole in the food foil. But looking at the piece of meat, it's obvious how omnivorous they really are. It is almost completely covered with holes that the voracious larvae managed to gnaw through during those 4 hours. The rodent, which I refused to eat corn sticks, was not squeamish about the meat. During the last few hours, the larvae ate the piece pretty hard, but the maggot, which is very strange, did not eat the meat. Of course, some burrows appeared in the piece, but it is far from the expected result, and certainly not comparable with the Zophobas or the wax moth. So far, it is hard to say which of them is the favorite, but at first glance, the moth is still ahead. So it is necessary to take this case to its logical conclusion. Throw the remaining pieces of meat back in, and what will happen next? Time will tell. After another 5 hours, it is safe to say that the Zophobas have defeated the wax moth. The long yellow larvae have completely eaten the flesh, but the moth still has a small piece left. The maggot is left behind for the second time in the contest. And for dessert, an apple. But this time, we'll do it a little differently. We throw an apple into the jar and pour maggots on top. But waiting to see which maggots would eat it all is too long. It took us 10 hours just to eat a small piece of meat, and while they were eating the apple, some of the larvae might grow into flies or moths. So let's keep it simple. Let's try to find out which of them will be the first to gnaw a hole in the surface of the fruit. After a while, we find out who the winner is, and it is, of course, the wax moth larva, and how successfully it gnawed right into the notch. But when we tried to take it out, the larva had slipped inside. Let's cut out the core and see how far it gets. Once again, I am amazed at the voraciousness of this larva. Not for nothing is it the most active. And so are the most active subscribers who give it likes. That's it for today. Bye-bye.